Now, I know what you're thinking, but this isn't a New Year's Eve special or anything. It's just a normal video. Now, I know you're also thinking, like, wow, you just did the same joke from last video. Yep, and you can't do anything about it. Battle Status Customizer. A plugin lets you customize your battle status and make it look like better. First, simply install the plugin. But wait! This is a special plugin that comes in 2 parts. Yeah, count them. 1, 2 parts. Just like that. When you go to the page to download this plugin, you'll see 2 download links. Download link for part 1 and download link for part 2. Download both plugins, put them in your JS folder, and install them with part 1 on top like this, then part 2 underneath it just like this. Now you're probably thinking, why does this plugin have 2 parts? And the answer is that there are so many parameters that like I had to split it into 2 parts. Otherwise, it'd just be so chaotic you wouldn't believe it. So pretty much, part 2 has all the gauge stuff, and part 1 has everything that isn't the gauge stuff. Yeah. But anyway, once you install those plugins, your battle GUI should look like this. As you can see, it's split into multiple parts, different windows for each single actor. And that's what this plugin revolves around. Instead of having one big window to represent all of the actors at once, you have 4 separate windows, give you more control, more style, and like just have cool motions with it when you do stuff. And yeah, there it is. Yay! Anyway, time for the explanation of everything. First, let's focus on the actor window parameters listed right here. As you can see, you can customize width, height, original X, original Y, XY, opacity, and tone, just like that for each window. Now, this is a little strange, because instead of setting positions for one window, you're setting it for 4 or 5 or however many windows you create for each actor. So let's go over how each thing works. First of all, the width is going to determine the width of each actor window. It's of course going to be just a number or a JavaScript evaluation. Now as you can see right here, it just takes the status window's width and divides it in 4, because by default it's going to be like 4 players or so. Now as you saw in the actual battle, the normal big status window isn't visible, but it still exists, and using it you can reference it to actually affect your other status windows for each actor. So for example, we can base it so each actor's status window is 1/4 of the entire big original status windows actor thing, whatever. Of course, you can also set the height for each actor window along with the original X and Y. Now what the original X and Y means is this is going to be the X and Y position of the first actor window in the battle. So say for example you have Harold as in slot 1 of your party, then his window will be based off of this position. Then every other succeeding window will use a formula presented within window X and window Y. So say for example you have Harold's window, it's going to be window number 1, and it's going to follow the status window X, and it's going to follow the status window Y. But then Teresa's is going to be window number 2, so she's going to have her window based off of Harold's window, because Harold's window will be represented by the previous variable right here. So we'll take Harold Window's previous main X, add their width, and that'll be Teresa's new X position. So using this, you can create formulas to create different types of, ways and functions in which windows move. Say for example, we make so the actor window Y is going to be the previous window's Y minus 10, just like that. Now as you can see, each of these actors' windows moves slightly upward, because each time one is created, 10 is added based on the previous window. So Harold is going to be in the position of the status window, Therese is going to be Harold's position, plus the width, and then 10 added to the Y. And same thing for Marsha relative to Therese, and same thing for Lucius relative to Marsha. That makes sense? No? Okay. Now, of course, like I displayed before, you can also customize the opacity and the tone of the actor windows. Now, this may seem a little bland by itself, but actually set up the opacity, tone, and actual window skin based on each individual actor. If you wish for a certain actor, so for example Harold, to have a specific tone on their window, simply use a note tag, battle status window tone, and then input the red, green, and blue. So for this example, make so the red's going to be 125, make so there's going to be 0 green and 0 blue. So Harold's window should appear a bit more red than the other ones. Now as you can see right here, Harold's window is going to be a lot redder, while the other ones will keep the consistent black look. So using this, you can make so each actor has their own custom color for their individual actor window status thingy, making them a little bit more unique and stuff. Pretty cool, right? The next note tag for actors is going to be the battle status window opacity note tag, which you can make so this specific actor has a specific opacity for their window status. Say for example we made it so Teresa's window opacity is going to be like 150. Now as you can see, Teresa's window is slightly faded because it's at an opacity of 150. More customization. Yay. You can also set individual window skins for each actor's battle status. So let's first install the actual window skin we want to use. So we'll go to our open folder, we'll go to image, create a some random dude folder if you don't already have one. Within there, create a battle-status folder. Then within there, input the window skins you wish to use. So see, for example, right here I have Yonfly's green window skin right there. And then within an actor, so for this example, Marsha, input the note tag battle status window skin, then input the file name, so just green as you saw before. Yeah. And then boom, there we go, Marsha is now using Yonfly's green window skin just like that. Next comes some options. If you go down here, you can see customize the face options, including their position and their size. Now, as you may notice, it's a little weirdly formatted. This is just a save space. So the way it works is I input a formula or number for the X position right here, input a little line right there, then the Y position right there. And that's how you make sure it's all in one big, parameter, just like that. Same for the width and height. Simply input the width, the line, and then the height, just like that. And of course, those could be JavaScript evaluations or numbers. As for the icon options, same thing, the X and Y position just like this, the width of the actual icons which you're allowed to move through, and the scale in which the icons exist. So if you have a smaller status, you can set this as 0.5 to make them half size, or maybe 2 if you want to make them bigger size. It's all up to you. Now, as you may notice, when we actually input for Harold, his window moves slightly up. Same for Therese and all the other actors available. This is just one cool thing you do with individual windows for each actor. This motion can also be customized within the parameters. So if we scroll all the way down to our input motion right here, we can set it whether it's going to use a highlight, whether it's going to have an X speed or an X max, and then the Y speed and the Y max. So you see right here, Harold and the other windows moved up a bit. That's because their Y speed was set to -4, and they're limited by -30 of a maximum offset on their Y scale. So just like that, if we make it so that way, it's going to be, so like, it's going to move up 4, then be restricted by 30. But of course, let's make it something else. So we'll take away that, and we'll take away that. Instead, we'll make it so that it's going to move at maybe like 5x speed, and be limited by maybe 40 frames, or 40, yeah, that much. Now, as you can see, when each actor does their input, their window will shift up to 40 pixels to the right at a speed of 5. So as you can see, it's just shifting just like that. And yeah, that's just how you can use the actual motions and stuff for the inputs. Another feature is a highlight. If you set the input highlight to true just like that, then that window will also be highlighted during their input, as you see right here. However, I wouldn't recommend doing this because of the next thing you can do. And that thing is actor selection. So say for example we go all the way to Lucius right here, and we make him use our heal skill. As you see right here, we have to select one of our actors. And we do so by highlighting each individual actor through our actor status thing like this. And of course, you can also customize motions for when you're selecting a specific actor to target. Going below the input motions, you can also do select motions as you see right here. So as you can see by default, it has no actual movement, but instead just makes so that there's a select highlight, just like this. Using this, you make so there's a difference between a select motion and an actual input motion. But say on the other hand you want an input motion to actually be a highlight, and then you want the select motion to be a movement, you can do that just by customizing these just like this. And now finally, at the very bottom of this plugin, you'll find various text inputs you can add to your actor statuses. As you see right here, text 1 is set to be the value of an actor's name, the position of 00, the box width as a width, the size of a text for 18 for the font and stuff, and then centered in the middle for an alignment. And just by doing that, you can make so actors have their actor name displayed in their box. And of course, you can create all types of text to be added to this status and stuff. It's just a cool thing you can do to add more stuff to your stuff. Yeah. Alright, time to move on to gauges now, the fun part of this plugin. First thing you'll notice at the top of this plugin is all these global settings for gauges. Manipulating these will manipulate all the settings for all the gauges, making things a lot more consistent, nice, and just better looking. Now let's actually scroll down to our very first gauge, Gauge 1, as you see right here. As you can see, Gauge 1 has a lot of options to choose from, but let's go through each individual one. First is a Gauge 1 text. This is the text that appears inside the gauge to actually give it a label. So as you see here, it's set to textmanager.hpa. So as you can see, this is going to be a JavaScript evaluation. This means if you do wish to put a direct string into this, simply input quotes and do something like direct string like that, and that'll just input direct string directly into the bar. Of course, alternatively, you can just do an evaluation. So for example, the text manager HPA, which represents the HPA from the database you set up in the first place. Next is the current value. This is the current value represented in the gauge. So say for example, the actor HP, which is going to be represented by how much a gauge is filled up. But of course, to determine how much a gauge fills up, you must know the maximum value. So input right below it the maximum value for that gauge. So for example, actor.mhp or actor's maximum HP, just like that. Below that, you can set up the position of the gauge. So it could be an X position, which is going to be a number or JavaScript evaluation, and the same for the Y position, just like this. Below that, it's a size. Same thing as before. Input the width on the left, and input the height on the right. Beneath this, we'll find the colors. This will create the color gradient on the actual gauge. So for this example, once again, it's going to be another JavaScript evaluation. So we can call upon the function this.hpGauge color 1 and this.hpGauge color 2, or alternatively, we can create direct strings like this and input something like a hex code. So for example, FF00CC. Like that. Once again, be sure if you do use a hex code, it is within these parentheses, just like, no wait, those are quotes. My mistake. Those aren't parentheses, they're quotes. Under that, we'll find the background color for the gauge. As you see, it's a JavaScript evaluation, so once again, you'll use quotes and then input a color or just use some sort of evaluation. Then the final customization parameter is the draw current max. If you set this to true, that means this gauge will draw the current value and the max value next to each other at the end of the gauge. So you can set that to true or set it to false if you determine you want to be like that. If we scroll down, we'll find that gauge 2 is used for the mana points, and if we scroll down further, gauge 3 is for TP or technical points, just like that. So as you can imagine, by default, actors use gauge 1, gauge 2, and gauge 3. Now, of course, you can have more gauges, like gauge 4, but you can customize which gauges are used by the actors. Here's how it works. When we go back to part 1 of the plugin, you notice this big parameter up here called default parts used. And this is a list of all the parts based off the parameters actors will use. So for example, the face, which is going to obviously show the face on their actor status, the icons, which are going to represent the actual icons for the states, of course, text 1, which as you saw before shows the actual actor name, along with gauge 1 for HP, gauge 2 for MP, and gauge 3 for TP, just like that. And by manipulating this, you can customize which parts are shown on each actor's status. Going back to the gauges, if we go all the way back to gauge 4, you notice that this is actually a copy of the mana points gauge. The only difference is the width is set to be the same width as the HP, making it across the entire status. In other words, this is just a bigger mana points gauge. So say for example, we remove gauge 3 and gauge 2 and instead replace it with gauge 4, just like that. As you can see in game, now our actors won't have their mini NP bar and their mini TP bar. Instead, they'll just have one big MP bar, which was created because they're using gauge 4 now. So the purpose of this is to simply create a very organized way to set up all the parts you want to actually use within a certain actor's, little status box right there. Now, if the only use for this was to make it so all actors had these, it would be a little useless. That's why I've made it so that you can specify specific parts to be used on specific actors. Let's say we want to make it so Lucius has a big MP bar instead of having a small MP bar and a small TP bar. Simply input the parts which use using the note tag battle status parts for the Lucius note tag in his actor spot. So we'll input all the parts we want to use, so face, icon, text 1, gauge 1, and gauge 4, just like that, and close it up and we'll be good to go. On the other hand, we'll make so the default parts used is back to using gauge 2 and gauge 3. In other words, splitting the bottom part off to TP and MP gauge for all the normal actors. So as you can see here, while all the other actors are using gauges 1, 2, and 3 for HP, MP, and TP, Lucius is using gauge 1 for HP and gauge 4 for a giant, bigger MP bar to fit with his magic usage and stuff. So yeah, that's how you do that. Yeah! So using this, you can create as many gauges as you like and specify certain actors to use certain gauges. Say for example you have a certain actor that uses a special type of currency, like they're like a thief and they use gold for their skills. Then set up a gauge for gold. Say you have a special actor that uses aura power instead of magic or TP. Then you set it so they have a special aura gauge. And yeah. So let's do an example. Now say for example, using Yanfly's ATB, you can actually set up gauges to show the ATB. Here's how I would do it. So you see here on gauge 5, I said so there's going to be no text that's going to be shown. The current value is going to be actor.atb rate as a function. The max is going to be 1. The position is going to be 10 and 18. The size is going to be a width of box width minus 20 and 8 for the height. I made sure the colors are going to be white for the min and max. I made sure the background color is going to be like a darker grayish color with its hex color code. I made sure it's not going to draw the current and max. Then underneath this, for gauge 6, also drew the charging gauge thing, you know, the thing that charges after it. So to do the current value, just do actor.atb charge rate. Once again, the max is going to be set to 1, and then I'm going to do the same position and width and height in order to overlay it over the previous gauge. I'm also going to make it so the color is going to be red, going to make it so the background color is going to be clear, and inputting clear makes it so it's actually going to be no background whatsoever. Finally, once again, it's going to be a current and max set to false, just like this. Also, very important, make sure you have gauge 5 and gauge 6, or whatever gauges you wish to use, set up in your default parts used, and in all the actors' note tags you wish to use them for, or else they won't appear. And so now, as you can see right here, in the game, we have ATB gauges running perfectly, just like this. Now, when the characters can input, they input, and then the actual action mode also works with the actual gauge above it, doing its thing and stuff. Welp, that's about it for this video. If you enjoyed, the download link to both plugins, part 1 and part 2 are, well, the link to where you can download both of them is in the description of this video. If you enjoyed, you should give a thumbs up and stuff, and be like, yeah, thumbs up time, and it'd be cool and stuff. Yeah, so, yeah, that's about it for, why is that, oh, I don't even know. Well, that's all for now. Until next time. Bye. Ooh, look at them dunce. Yay.